Do you promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do. So help me God.
So help me God, I promise. I do.
Yes, I do. Je l'affirme.
I do.
I do.
I do.
I do. I do.
Yes, I do.
Absolutely.
I do. I do.
I do. I do. I do. I do. I do. I do. I do.
Do you promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do. So help me God.
So help me God, I promise. I do.
Yes, I do. Je l'affirme.
I do.
I do.
I do.
I do. I do.
Yes, I do.
Absolutely.
I do. I do.
I do. I do. I do. I do. I do. I do. I do.
Super Spreaders, thank you for joining us. It's a historic day. The new National Citizens Inquiry hearings have been announced for Vancouver, October 17th to 19th. And anyone who's cool will be going to the event. We'll be there all 3 days, streaming and posting, just like we were in Ottawa. And those were heady and exciting times, and they are again. This one's unique in that this is the first time the National Citizens Inquiry is bounding out of the topic of vaccines and lockdown specifically to head into a new topic that was suggested and voted on the website to pick a new topic, and that topic has ended up being "Are Children Safe in Canada?" And we're really honored to have with us the lead counsel from the National Citizens Inquiry to explain these things. Let's bring them on.
Promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
So help me God, I promise. I do.
Yes, I do.
I do. So help me God.
Je l'affirme.
Monsieur Buckley, welcome.
Oh, well, thanks for having me. It's an honor to be on your show, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in Vancouver.
Yeah, it's going to be great. It's going to be like old times.
Well, it was fun. It was fun in Ottawa. So you attended in Ottawa, and that's where I first got to meet you in person.
That's right.
And I think you'll agree with me. And do you remember the last day in Ottawa where the people in attendance just on their own stood up after the closing and started singing the national anthem?
Yes.
And just what a powerful moment that was. And you know, on the trailer you had Sheila Lewis. She testified in Ottawa, I think on day one. And do you recall there wasn't, like, everyone started weeping.
That was devastating.
And then for the witness after her, everyone started weeping. I had to leave the room. Like, I called her as a witness. And I didn't, and then another lawyer took the next witness, and I didn't want, I knew I was going to start crying, and I didn't want people to see it, so I had to leave the room.
I was at the press table, and we're supposed to be covering the event, you know, objectively, and everybody's just like, something's in my eye.
Yeah.
It was, you know, it's so terrible, and she's a great example of why we're still so dedicated, I think, to doing this, right? I mean, my name says browser. That's interesting. I'm going to fix that. Yes, she's a shining example of that.
Yeah, it was sure powerful. It was sure powerful, Sheila
Yeah.
Lewis's testimony.
So then we've had another round already this year of NCI. Was that May?
Yeah, well, it was it was end of May and into the first day of June in Regina. And, you know, it was the same experience where, you know, it was extremely trying. Like, I find after a set of hearings, I need just a bit of time to shake the emotion. And I remember Dr. I think it was James Thorpe, like, talking about the kids and pregnancy issues and that. like some of the evidence, we had Dr. Pierre Corey, we scheduled him for an hour and a half, and he actually delivered some information that he hadn't made public yet at the NCI. And it's funny because we have, like, the experts want to line up and be part of the NCI just because it's gained so much credibility. There's still nothing like it in the world where a citizen-run inquiry gets people to testify under oath as to, it has been on COVID-19, but yeah, now we're switching to the broader topic, are children safe? And same problem again, we're having to whittle down witnesses because we can only fit in about 12 a day, and that's going to 8 at night. Like we tell the commissioners, like, we've got a new commissioner coming on for this set of hearings, and like, we have to let them know, like, you do know we're sitting till at least 8 at night. We could go longer. Like, I think once we went to 10:30.
Starting at 9?
We probably will be starting at 8:45, but I mean, the volunteer team that does the scheduling, and bless them, they've got some pesky issues to deal with. Like, there's this guy that does these openings and runs long, overdue, and stuff like that. So they've got to try and make it work in a day. So
yeah. So what? 12 a day, 36 witnesses, and you're already having to whittle.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. And I'm not involved in like putting the schedule together, but I think they're trying to leave a couple of slots open, because what's happened every time is people keep applying, like, right up until the hearings are running. And I think that the NCI is already thinking, well, we're going to have to carry on this theme, on the next set of hearings. Mm-hmm. That's not finalized or anything, but there's just been tremendous interest in it. And I can tell you, the hearings are going to blow your mind, literally. Literally. So is any kind of existential threat to children's welfare being considered in this topic, or are we looking mostly medical issues? Well, what do you mean by existential threat? So
existential to their safety, to their health. I mean, are we talking about societal issues, political indoctrination in the schools? Are we talking about ideological things that are happening we've been finding out has been happening to children for decades in schools, or are we looking more strictly at say perhaps vaccines and other health issues, or food, kind of thing?
Like, the NCI always tries to go as broadly as possible, but sees who applies, right? So the question, are children safe? I mean, that could go anywhere. It could go, legal, loss of parental rights and things like that. It could go medical, but in medical, it wouldn't be just vaccines. I mean, children now, we've got this mature minor doctrine, which goes beyond vaccines. It can be consenting to gender change and things like this, at an age where you have no other legal responsibilities, but basically you can make, life-changing decisions that will affect you forever before you hit puberty, because of these doctrines. So there's a whole, it can be education, SOGI and the like the education system has changed. And I mean, any historian will tell you that, we've known for as long as we've had kids that those who control the message in the education system basically decide the shape of society going forward. So, so I mean, interesting educational issues, and socioeconomic, anyone who has anything to say on that issue can apply to be a witness at the NCI, and the NCI always tries to have as broad of topics as possible. On the education front, I was speaking with one potential witness who, was a youth probation officer for a long, long time, and expertise in sex offenders also, who, introduced to me the idea that actually, with SOGI, the schools are basically introducing the exact same sexual themes that, sex offenders use to groom kids. Like, like the messaging is exact, except that
Yeah.
the schools are giving it now instead of sex offenders who groom kids. And I thought, well, that's pretty interesting. And I don't know if that witness will be scheduled or not, but I can say that just, the interaction I've had so far with witnesses, it's been pretty interesting.
So the pipeline is pretty wide open to whatever is considered, a harm to children in Canada. So that's interesting. So I guess, the quality and breadth of the witnesses will end up declaring exactly where we end up going from kind of one testimony to the next.
Yeah, like again, I'm not on the committee making the final decisions, although, I get to say, hey, I think we should have this person or that. But, I know they look at things like, well, okay, we don't want a whole bunch of witnesses on one topic. We want broad hearings. And, and then when you interview, like you could interview somebody and they can't communicate. And somebody like that has an effect too. Is it a reasonable, like we don't want to put people on the stand if it's not a serious testimony. If you can attend in person, I think that carries a little more weight. So I know internally they're already talking, well, maybe we'll have another set on the same topic in Ontario. So all things being equal, people that are willing to travel to be at the Vancouver hearings or who are already local will have a little more priority. And the NCI tries to do that anyway, because there's different areas of Canada, like we definitely learned with COVID. I mean, there's a whole different experience. And that'll be the same on this issue. Like there's a local flavor on every issue, so they try to privilege local people. Like it's kind of like, just if you got a group of maybe 7 or 8 of your viewers together and said, okay, well, you guys schedule the witnesses, it's the same types of factors they'd come up with, right? It's, how do we best structure this to get the kind of the best picture possible, knowing we only have 3 days at that location, right?
The selection committee are those made for each hearing more locally, or you guys just run from the organization top down kind of thing?
It varies, Jason, and it also depends on who's volunteering at the time and who's available. So with the first set of hearings that we did in 2023, where we went to 8 cities, the local committees had pretty wide say, not in the experts. So we had one team vetting the experts, led by a medical doctor, but the local teams had a lot of influence on who the lay witnesses were, and also in identifying local experts. So, but there again, it's a back and forth. On the Regina set of hearings, I'd say it was much similar. And, I'm not sure actually at the Vancouver set, because I'm not as involved in that selection. But, so to date, the local teams have had a pretty good impact on, who the witnesses were. And it makes sense. So you're a local team and it's like, oh, but there's this witness, and they're the ones who know, right? So, yeah.
Very cool. I like how you guys keep such a rigidly hierarchical structure, a separated structure. It's neat that I think most people that casually watched NCI, if it's possible to casually watch it, would think that it's like the Sean Buckley show, and Sean gets his favorite people on there and he decides what happens and stuff. But you guys have full structure, a full board, committees that handle these things, and to some degree, it's a bit of a mystery who's going to be on there for you. So that's great.
So for example, in the first set of hearings in 2023, I was involved in, I wasn't involved in the local committees, except for, they would have fairly regular meetings, the heads of the committees, so that, everyone was keeping track of the new developments and how things were going. I would attend some of those to explain things like how it was going to work with council and the like, but I wasn't involved in that witness selection at all. So I would have had some input, on the expert stuff, but no, it was pretty diffuse. And this set of hearings, I've brought some witnesses forward and asked for them to be, witnesses, and I think they will be. But I could have just as much be told, no, we're not slotting those, right?
Yeah.
So and and who does what changes because it's a volunteer organization. So some people, move on, some come forward, and so, if anyone's, wanting to be involved, keep bugging them. But bear in mind the NCI, like, it's funny, Jason, because sometimes we've had people complain to us saying, well, I've applied to be a volunteer and I've applied again and again, and, nobody's gone back to me, not realizing, well, yeah, but we're a volunteer organizations. So some volunteers got to get around to doing that, right? And then bringing it. Yeah. So it's what I found interesting about the NCI is that it comes together at all, because, and that I pull in the direction. I think it's just, God's good grace, because time after time after time, it literally wasn't going to come together. And it's just, people like you that have made it happen. Like, you do these trailers, which are so professional, it's crazy. And so people look at that, and they think, like, you could go to an ad agency, and I'm sorry, you could, and pay 20 grand, and you'd be thankful if you got something that didn't look as professional as the stuff you've made as a volunteer. Well, people see that, and I don't know, they think that we're, Microsoft or something, this big organization with 1,000 employees, when, we're a small group of volunteers that make it happen. But, like the witnesses stepping up, people donating, all of this, like, we're again at the crossroads where, well, we've got hearings in less than 3 weeks. We need your viewers to start pushing out on their networks that, the posts and stuff that are happening, and that this is going on. So, because that's how then people get driven to it. It's volunteers, because we don't have a big communications organization. We got one guy that's posting regularly to, and he's doing great work, but that's all it is.
Yeah. So, that's exactly why I want to do this now. It seems like close enough that it's highly relevant, and everyone should start supporting and putting pressure, socially sharing all this stuff far enough away that anybody that's remotely close can book plane tickets, and they won't be unrealistically expensive. Mine were actually shockingly cheap, which isn't cheap, but I was surprised. There was some really great deals, because we're still, a month out. People can book. So if we get some people aware of it and fill up that hall, get people in from all over. I think anyone from the edge of Alberta, Yukoners. I'm going to try to see if I can bring a couple more Yukoners down.
And it's different in person.
Yeah.
Like, because you followed us up till Ottawa online, but it's a totally different thing in person. And part of the fun is all of a sudden you see there's cameras and there's lights, and it's almost like an airport. Like our AV team of 2. Which, you think it's it is a professional production, because they just do magic, but you saw it's just 2 people.
Yeah.
But it's funny, it's just so many people have walked in front of the camera that they've got tape everywhere, and you like literally think you're in an airport, looking at the ground. And it just has a different feel, and you see all the kind of the busyness, and, people talking to the witnesses beforehand and getting them ready. It's and, just the gaffes, so when we go offline, there's still things happening, and the commissioner's putting up their hand because I haven't, somebody needs to go to the bathroom because we didn't take a coffee break because we're running, behind schedule. Like, it's something different. And then, so please come if you can at all attend in person. There will be tickets online. We're not posting where the venue is until shortly before, so that, there isn't pressure to shut us down. We have trouble getting venues now.
Right. Okay, good. I'm glad you said that, because I might have blurted it out. I didn't know we were doing that, but that's a very smart thing to do. Everybody that isn't on the kind of, postmodern media side of things, they'll come after you. They'll do all sorts of crazy stuff. We just saw another set of kids throw tomato soup on a Van Gogh. They love doing this stuff. They love disrupting things and getting things shut down. So, yeah. Okay, good. Good to know that.
Well, for the Million Man March, you had counter protesters. Now, this is just a broad question. Are children safe in Canada? But, and like I say, I'm not doing the witness scheduling, but, it's going to cover all topics. Now, you can be on any side of the spectrum and apply to testify, because the NCI wants to hear from everyone, right? So, on the issue of parents really losing control over medical decisions, well, there will be people that think that's positive and safe for kids will come and testify, right? Like, so don't protest, apply and testify, and explain why you think it's a good thing, right? So that's the thing about the NCI. And at least in this case, like with the COVID hearings, we sent subpoenas out to a ton of government officials, health ministers and public health officers and the like, and none of them came and testified. We had one MLA actually in Regina did come and testify, a government MLA, and it was interesting because we learned that there wasn't even a caucus discussion on the lockdowns. Like it really was top down upon even the MLAs, so that they had no input at all into what was going on, and they weren't really being briefed on what was going on. Well, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Like it truly was. Now, but we weren't expecting like the health ministers and that to come, because you have to swear to tell the truth. And if you're in a court or a government inquiry, that can't be used against you elsewhere.
Yeah.
But at the NCI, it can be used against you elsewhere, which even makes the oath more meaningful. You're not protected. You're swearing to tell the truth. So, you can be convicted of perjury, but it can be used against you in another court, right? So, I mean, it's even like double jeopardy, so to speak. But on this issue, if you're on the other side of the debate, you're not going to. Why wouldn't you come and testify?
Well, that's what I've always wondered, and you're reading my mind. This is exactly one of the questions I wanted to have. If you've seen evidence of anyone that promotes these modern agenda, both health and social, on children, anyone that wants to stand up and defend it.
Yeah, and again, like the commissioners, when they sign a letter for that set, they're supposed to come out, hear the evidence, and come out with positive recommendations based solely on the evidence. So, so the NCI always tries to approach things just broadly, like you come and tell your story, you come and share your evidence. And, any supporting documents in that, we always invite witnesses. If you're going to rely on outside information, give it to us in advance. We'll make it an exhibit. So if anyone wants to dive more deeply into your testimony, there's actually often, from any of the witnesses, information they didn't go into detail about, but helps you take a deeper dive that they put up on their witness page. So I think they would, with all hearings, it'd be more interesting if we get different sides to the debate, and then Canadians get a broader idea, and then they can decide what they think themselves, because we just want the truth, and you get to the truth by hearing different sides, right? Like anyone, if you want a great experience on how you should listen to more than one side, just in your town or city, go to family court, where family court things are being argued. Preferably in a superior court, where on a motions day, and somebody's going to stand up, some lawyer, and argue for 15 minutes. Like, don't go to trials, go to motions, and you're going to go, oh my gosh, yeah, the judge better grant this order. And then the other lawyer's going to get up and give a totally different perspective, and you're going to go, oh no, I was wrong to just be thinking it was one-sided, right? And every issue is that way. Like, we're all stronger when we hear other voices.
Yeah, I wish we could get some people out that promoted these measures and just explain to us why they think it's so great. Usually, I just hear negative arguments. People who don't like this are racist, or grand eloquence, like we have to be inclusive or whatever. But I mean, never hear like detailed points about how we're keeping children safe in Canada by through health and school and these new modern issues that we're really worried about. why did they think they're so great, and where are the facts and charts so we can show that everybody's happier and healthier and safer? I'd love to see that.
Yeah, and I mean, even even the inclusive thing is like, so if you message saying, well, let's be more inclusive on something, most of us intuitively will actually want to support that just because of your messaging. But if at the end of the day, like, I mean, so not even talking about the NCI hearings about are our children safe, a reasonable person in Canada today might be of the opinion, haven't we become actually more intolerant because of our inclusive policies? I mean, there's something to be said there. And I don't know if the witnesses are going to be scheduled, but 2 potential witnesses at this Vancouver set of hearings, one would involve a school trustee that, spoke out against SOGI, and then the lawyer, where like just awful things were said and a defamation suit is started, and actually where the court changes the test, and the law becomes, well, you can't criticize the agenda, but the other side can criticize you. And it's just kind of interesting. Like, so regardless of what you think about SOGI, what's happened legally and who can have a voice, well, that's interesting. And you should know about that, because you might actually, support SOGI, but think, well, wait a second, I don't think long-term it's good for us to be not allowing people to disagree and, treating them in that way, because that then sets a precedent for other issues, right? So, these are not simple topics. And again, we're just stronger. Like those commissioners, they will have a better opportunity to come out with positive recommendations if they understand all sides. So, I sure hope that anyone that's worried, the NCI is, going to be, grinding an axe against this agenda or that agenda, well, no, actually apply yourself and share your thoughts, so that Canadians watching have get to hear all sides. And we found with the COVID hearings, there was something actually helpful in us being a community when we would respectively listen to everyone's voice. Like, it's something that I think has been lost, is that, if we disagree with people now, we don't want to even hear. And we all have an information bias, right? Like, we're hardwired, our brains are hardwired to disregard information that conflicts with what we already believe. And we always have to be kind of checking that. But we used to at least be more civil and allow people to share their stories. And we wouldn't interfere with that.
There was a gentleman in Ottawa who was with government programs, something to do with, trying to remember the content, but it was obvious.
One Health.
He was more coming from that that side of the social views and political views. And the next break after that, I was just being hit with people who wanted to drag him off the stage and stuff like that. And I was like, wait, hold on. The NCI has been very clear that they invited everybody. They invited Justin Trudeau. Well, what would you do if he showed up? We can't be resistant to hearing the other side. That's the whole point of the inquiry. It's just that we can barely get the other side to stop ignoring us or insulting us, let alone actually show up. So when they do show up, I agree. You should just listen and let the commissioners recommend. And it'll be interesting to see, because if we don't, we're headed towards more tyranny, I believe. And as you were just informing me, we've got scary bills, even more scary bills coming up. Bill C-69. What do you know about this monstrosity?
Okay, so hardly anyone is talking about Bill C-69. Like, people are focusing on this 298, this Pandemic Preparedness Act.
Yeah.
But so Bill C-69 is our 2024 budget bill. Like, Jason, I don't know, does the Canadian government spend trillions of dollars a year? Probably. And I wanted to say hundreds of billions, but it's probably trillions. And so what, every year when you come up with your budget, well, you've got to pass a budget bill. Sometimes you're creating programs, sometimes you're changing existing programs, which will be set out in other pieces of legislation. And so the budget bill is what you do so that you can spend the money the way you've decided to spend it. Well, the budget bill is not meant to make substantive changes to other things. You don't, and for the last 2 years in a row, Health Canada has snuck in substantive changes to the Food and Drug Act, to our food safety laws, and they've hidden it in the budget bill, and that is an affront to our democratic parliamentary process, because this bill, I think, is like 668 pages long or something like that, and nobody's going to pay attention to 2 or 3 pages that change the Food and Drug Act, and nobody even looks at that. And when you're going to make changes to your food and drug safety laws, the way Parliament works is you have first reading, which kind of introduces it, and then you have second reading, so everyone's had a chance to look at it, and you vote on it, and if it passes second reading, it goes to what's called committee. Well, if it's a bill on health, it goes to the Health Committee on Parliament, which all these committees, they're multi-party committees with expertise in the subject. So a budget bill goes to the Treasury Committee. Well, they have no expertise in food and drug law, but they're the ones that considered Bill C-69. Well, what the heck, right? So, and budget bills pass quickly because, the government's got to keep running. So they snuck changes in there, and I have to tell you, your audience, I analyzed these changes for the NHPPA. So, you can go to nhppa.org, and there's, a resources tab, discussion papers. You can find the discussion paper on this, but I'm just going through these in order, and I'm scratching my head. It's kind of like, well, none of these, are an issue in our public debate. Nobody's saying any of this is a problem. Like, what's going on? Like, I didn't understand why they were there. And I actually found myself, so I'm at my desk. I've now analyzed all of them. And I'm scratching my head and I'm saying, I don't understand what's going on. And I actually prayed about it. And then then the message came to me, Sean, you're looking at them individually. They're a package. They've come together as a package. Consider them as a package. And then the lights went on. Oh, this is a shopping list for how to do a pandemic better the next time to avoid legal liability and close the loopholes. So and this is just my opinion, right?
Okay.
So let's walk through this, and I'll relate it to the last pandemic. And so to me, the changes in Bill C-69 are a clear signal that the government is positioning itself legally for another COVID-type pandemic. So, well, what was one loophole for the government for COVID-19? Well, it was off-label use of drugs. So let's use the word ivermectin. So ivermectin was not and I have to explain what off-label and on-label use is. So Health Canada will approve a drug for a specific use, but doctors might use it for another use. So, for example, most clinical trials that pharmaceutical companies use to get drug approval, they will only do the clinical trials on a healthy subset of the population, so there aren't danger signals, right? So no clinical trial is run including elderly people. No clinical trials are run with kids because it's unethical. And no clinical trials are run on pregnant mothers. So basically any prescription drug use for the elderly, kids, or pregnant mothers is off-label use. Or let's say Pfizer ran a clinical trial on a breast cancer drug. Well, they'd run it on phase 1 because you're going to get the best health outcomes and best safety outcomes, because in phase 1, people aren't really sick. So they might run a clinical trial on females aged 25 to 35 even though not many of those get breast cancer, it tends to be older females, but they're going to get better outcomes. So they run their double-blind clinical trials for this drug for phase 1 breast cancer, females aged 25 to 35, and they get Health Canada approval. Well, now most of the women with stage 1 breast cancer are going to be a lot older than that. It's all off-label use. Stage 2 breast cancer, it's all off-label use. What if the drug turns out it's not really good on breast cancer, but it really works well on something else? Doctors are free to use it. That's off-label use. So most of our prescription drug use is off-label use. So I just want your viewers to understand what off-label use is.
Okay.
So when doctors during COVID were using ivermectin for off-label use, like to use it for COVID, well, ivermectin is not approved for COVID. But doctors are free to do that. Now, we know that the colleges of physicians and surgeons went after doctors for using ivermectin. I mean, Dr. Charles Hoff is still in proceedings with the college in BC over this. And so, you know, doctors are kind of being reined in, but it wasn't a criminal offense. But now the Minister of Health can basically make an order that you can't use a drug for off-label use. So now, if, you know, let's say we have the next pandemic, let's say that there's a monkeypox pandemic and it turns out ivermectin works really well for monkeypox. Well, if doctors were suggesting to patients and publicly that ivermectin is effective for the monkeypox, the Minister of Health makes an order saying you can't do that. Well, now it's a criminal offense under the Food and Drug Act with jail and $5 million a day fines.
Gee, I mean, they did so well with it last time, and they didn't even need to criminalize it. They just
but
you know.
but people, pesky podcasters like you, might have people like Pierre Corey on who's talking about ivermectin. So the next change is they say, well, the Minister of Health can basically prohibit off-label use for a drug or class of drugs, and for greater certainty, that includes the promotion of off-label use. This has nothing to do with doctors. So now you have Pierre Corey on talking about how ivermectin is effective for the monkeypox, and the Minister of Health has prohibited the promotion of ivermectin for anything but the approved claim. Now for every day, because in Canada, every day something's up on the internet as a separate publication. So now every day, your interview with Dr. Pierre Corey is posted online. You are now guilty to a separate $5 million a day fine and or jail. For every day is a separate offense. Now, you go after one or two podcasters criminally for having stories about ivermectin, and you know what's going to happen is most of them are not going to touch the subject. So remember, otherwise this doesn't make sense. Like off-label use by doctors is provincial jurisdiction, because your doctor, be they, you know, a medical doctor or naturopath or whatever, they're going to sit down, understand the patient history, understand the condition the patient has, and they just make the best medical judgment they can. Well, I think you should use this. Why is the Minister of Health being able to step in and affect the doctor-patient relationship? It's not because there's a problem with what doctors are doing. So this is coming out of the blue. And you mean promotion? What? Okay. So next new power in Bill C-69 is the Minister of Health can do whatever it takes to prevent humans from accessing veterinary drugs for human use.
Okay, this is where I think I'm on with my Command F search in the document. Supplementary rules, drug intended for animals.
Division 31.
Yeah. So intended for an animal of particular species, including use other than the intended use, may prevent a risk of adverse effects to human beings. Establish rules in respect of importation, sale, conditions of sale, advertising, manufacturing, preparation, preserving. The short explanation is the Minister of Health can take steps to prevent humans from accessing drugs for veterinary use. Now, you're basically, every chicken and cow and everything now basically gets its own identification number. You have to register them with the government. So now how you would do this is well, they just make it so any veterinary medical suppliers, you basically have to give the animal number,
oh, this is for a cow. Well, how long are you treating the cow? So ivermectin is approved as a dewormer. Well, a realistic use might be using it for, a month.
Wow.
Okay, well, this is how much you would need for a single cow. So humans who don't have animals are not going to be able to order ivermectin if they put those types of procedures in place.
Wow, and that'll be the end to any of the kind of online selling of these, ivermectin kits and antibiotic kits and stuff like that they're using.
Well,
because now they're trying to claim that ivermectin is almost only for animals.
yeah, which is crazy because it was a human drug first. Like most veterinary drugs start as human drugs.
Right.
And the inventors of ivermectin got a Nobel Prize. It's one of the most widely used human drugs in the world.
Yeah.
So now let's go on to the other changes. So the Minister of Health can now exempt any food or drug from any of our regulations and from Part 1 of the Food and Drug Act. Now, people who don't know Part 1 of the Food and Drug Act might not understand how significant that is. Now, our food and drug safety laws tend to be built on experience. So let's say you want to put orange dye into popsicles so that more kids will eat them. Well, is the dye safe? Well, we kind of learn over time. And so, we want to be ultra safe, which is causing no more than 1 death per million per year. So, there's 40 million Canadians. If we're going to have an orange dye in popsicle, we shouldn't be killing more than 40 kids a year. So we want to stay ultra safe, right? So, and then when we learn that, we'll put in the regulations. Well, for this, you can only put in this amount type thing, right? So it's kind of like collective wisdom. So why would we be allowing the minister to exempt food or drugs from our safety regs? But Part 1, the safety provisions in Part 1 of the Food and Drug Act, they are so important we've put them into the Act. Because we've learned people really die if these lines are crossed. And there's 3 lines. So the first line is you can't fraudulently market a food or drug. And I'll just talk about drugs, but this applies to foods. So you can't lie to Canadians about a drug because we've learned bad things happen when you lie about drugs. So it's a criminal offense under our Food and Drug Act to be fraudulent about a drug. So in what circumstance, Jason, is it going to be in Canadians' interests for the Minister of Health to allow Canadians to be lied to about a drug? That's a rhetorical question. The next safety line, so it's in Part 1 of our Food and Drugs Act, is you can't sell a drug that's adulterated. Now, in the food and drug world, that means adulterated with a dangerous substance. It doesn't mean, we're manufacturing a drug and we can't get safe filler A, so we're going to adulterate it with safe filler B. No, we're talking with the dangerous substance.
Right.
So it's criminal in Canada to sell a drug that is adulterated with a dangerous substance. But now the Minister of Health can exempt a drug or class of drugs that is adulterated with a dangerous substance. And again, like on what planet is it okay for the Minister of Health to allow Canadians to have access to a drug that's adulterated with a safe substance? Like, when is that okay?
When these amendments, are they amendments? When these budgetary amendments are passed, I mean, does it become federal law forever if they make these changes?
They'd have to amend the
yearly budget.
They'd have to amend the Food and Drug Act now. So you'd have to draft a bill, get it through 3 votes in Parliament, 3 readings in Parliament, and then into the Senate and pass 3 readings.
You'd have to make a separate act to undo this once it's done.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Really? What the heck? It's supposed to be a budget.
Yes,
like American style stuff.
It shouldn't be there. I attended as a witness in front of the Treasury Committee when this bill was in committee, and I asked the Treasury Committee. I made your point. I said, listen, these are substantive changes to our food safety law. You're the Treasury Committee. You should recommend that this part be kicked out of the bill, and they introduce it as a separate bill, so it goes to the Standing Committee on Health. But they ignored me, and and pressed on. Now, the third thing is the third safety line is you can't allow a drug that's manufactured under unsanitary conditions to be marketed to Canadians. Well, now the Minister of Health can exempt. Now, if you think this is for a COVID-like thing, then this makes sense, Jason. So let's think back to COVID and the mRNA vaccines. So Health Canada, the government, the pharmaceutical companies cannot be held liable for making and marketing and promoting a vaccine that was not proven to be safe and was not proven to be effective, because they were exempted from having to prove safety and effectiveness, because the Minister of Health came out with an interim order, and they didn't have to go through the regular drug approval test and our drug regulations. If anyone's interested, it's C.08.001 and follows for a bit. So they were exempted from the regular procedure, and they didn't have to prove it was safe, and they didn't have to prove it was effective. And I testified about that at the NCI and the Quebec City hearings. If anyone wants to watch that testimony, you'll understand what I'm talking about.
And the last time we had a free conversation on the Super Show here, you went off. Most of the show ended up being about that, and so there's lots of detail
so
here.
If
you search Buckley Super Spreaders on Rumble, Sean takes us through it in great detail, the insanity of how the shots were passed. Anyway, sorry, continue.
So the point I'm making is Health Canada and pharmaceutical companies, they can't be liable the last time round for, the drugs not being safe and effective. But boy, the government and the pharmaceutical companies could be liable for fraudulent marketing on safe and effective. I mean, for every COVID-19 vaccine Health Canada has approved, Health Canada on the Health Canada site has a separate page. So you could go to the Pfizer vaccine page, for example, on the Health Canada site. And I haven't checked recently, but like for years, the first sentence in bold is something like, all COVID-19 vaccines approved of by Health Canada have been proven to be safe, effective, and the highest quality. Well, I'm of the opinion that a court might find that to be fraudulent messaging, that they wouldn't even accept that that's political messaging. And Health Canada has had messaging on the adulteration and all of this that a court might disagree and think that's fraudulent. Well, why have that liability next time round, Jason? Now the Minister of Health can pass an order saying, for monkeypox vaccines, they're exempt from Section 9 of the Food and Drug Act. That's the fraud section. And they're exempt from the adulteration section, because we know, even with the DNA contamination, a court could find that's dangerous adulteration, right? Let alone, the lipid nanoparticles. And then also, it was the European regulatory agency at the beginning was saying these are not manufactured under sanitary conditions, and was raising a flag about it, and everyone ignored it. So you see how the Minister of Health being able to exempt those three areas, fraud, adulteration, and unsanitary manufacturing practices, allows them to avoid, both pharmaceutical companies and Health Canada, to avoid any liability if we have another pandemic and they rush through some mRNA vaccines for them. Now it gets even better. Ugh. So for the last pandemic, pharmaceutical companies had to apply for drug approval to Health Canada, and then the Health Canada experts would go through the application and say yay or nay under this test that didn't include safety and efficacy. But really, why have our own experts look at it even under a substituted test? So the way around that is you put a new definition into the Act of foreign entity. Now, a foreign entity could include a regulatory body of another government, but it's defined so broadly, Jason, it could include the World Health Organization.
I saw that when we were command F'ing on this document. So there we are. C, deem on the basis of decisions of information or documents produced by
foreign entity,
a foreign regulatory authority, that certain requirements of that act or its regulations are met.
So now, here's the beauty. So if the World Health Organization or some African country that didn't have, as rigorous of an approval process as ours, approved a new vaccine, the Minister of Health could say, well, don't bother applying to Canada, just based on the foreign approval, we're going to grant you an approval here. Why have our experts that are getting paid by the Canadian taxpayers to protect them, why have them look at it? I mean, you have to agree, Jason, that sounds pretty silly to have experts paid by the Canadian public to actually do their job and protect the Canadian public. Like, that won't do. But it gets even better. So why are we even bothering about a foreign regulatory approval? The Minister of Health can exempt any food or drug from the entire food, or Part 1 of the Food and Drug Act, and any of our regulations based on portions of documents submitted to a foreign regulatory body or foreign entity. So you mean a pharmaceutical company could apply for a drug license to another country, the other country say, no, we're not granting the license, but we can grant it based on portions of the documents submitted. Like, you know, I am actually worried that when I say stuff like this, people aren't going to believe me, which is why, no, it's Bill C-69, Section 31. Go to the parliamentary website, look it up yourself. I'm truly not making this up, because if it wasn't in black and white, I would myself think I'm going nuts.
This is, I know, me too. That's how
And
I feel. So I put it back up on the screen, Sean.
Surely this guy's joking, right?
Maybe it is. Maybe it's just a big LOL. And
Maybe it's a spoof, and the Parliament of Canada is just playing an April Fool's joke on us and putting the texts of bills up that aren't. It's not real.
Odysee and April Fools.
So,
it's up on the screen again, just so that viewers can see I've highlighted the line exactly that we're talking about, where we're just gonna go ahead.
This has happened without any parliamentary debate on these changes. Yeah. The budget bill, they weren't being asked questions about this. I went and spoke to an MP that voted for the bill, and the MP didn't know any of this was in there. Of course, most of them won't. So here we've had these fundamental changes, and the whole thing's a fraud on the Canadian public.
Yeah, and it's 321 pages that this one sentence comes up in. Now,
Jason, the reason given by the government for this, and there's the Minister of Health, there's a video of him online explaining why we need these changes, is to protect vulnerable youth from tobacco pouch or nicotine patches and flavored vaping products. So the reason why we need to be able to exempt drugs from fraud, exempt drugs, allow drugs that are adulterated with dangerous substances, allow drugs that are manufactured under unsanitary conditions, is to protect vulnerable youth from nicotine pouches and flavored vaping products. Does that ring true to you?
That we would normally want more restrictions on, as far as...
Well, the thing is, none of these is the Minister of Health already has all the powers he or she needs under the Food and Drug Act, and none of these powers have any sense. Are doctors prescribing flavored nicotine or vaping products to youth off-label? Like, are doctors doing this? Do we need to prevent off-label use? Oh, and those veterinary supply stores, they are marketing. Jason, I mean, your viewers need to know. So veterinary supplies places are selling flavored vaping products for animals to humans. Who knew? I didn't know. I didn't know.
I'm outraged.
So we clearly need to protect our vulnerable youth to be able to prohibit humans from accessing veterinary drugs.
Wow.
I mean, it makes no sense. And then later they added, well, no, actually, this is also to help us be able to import baby formula. So wait a second. So baby formula doesn't comply with our safety regulations? The Minister of Health should be allowing it to be imported? Oh, thank you, Minister of Health. I really like that idea. So you need to exempt unsafe baby formula that doesn't comply with our minimum safety standards so that it can be given to Canadian babies? Really? We can't get safe food for babies in Canada? I guess we can't.
Were there other little secret amendments being smuggled in there?
No, that's really it. I mean, and so
Yeah,
like I
it's
said,
enough.
I analyzed
It's
those.
enough.
I analyzed those not thinking pandemic, and none of it made sense to me. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, I'm totally lost here. I have no idea what's going on. And it's only when I think of them as a package that they make sense, and they only make sense as a package as, you know, if Health Canada came to me and said, well, we're going to have another pandemic, we're hiring you to basically solve our problems with people using off-label use and our legal liability, and we may not even want to go through the drug approval process, because even though we've exempted them from having to prove safety and effectiveness, you know, we still have that pesky little act called the Criminal Code, and we might not be okay there. But, you know, if somebody like the World Health Organization's approved it, surely without looking at it, we could say that's okay, and then later on say, oh, well, we didn't understand.
Wow. And then you put that there's still Bill C-63, which will create human rights tribunals and hotlines and shut down channels like us, as well as Bill S-210, the Senate bill that would give the government authority to pull the plug at the ISP level on sites that they don't like
Right, but
Twitter.
63, I mean, what's insidious is it basically forces the telecommunication company. So you're an internet company, or, you know, you're a platform for social media. Well, there's all these strict things you are required to do, and have these plans in place, and submit them to the government and follow through to basically censor for the government. And if you don't, the fine can be 10% of your gross.
Yeah.
Well, you could be losing money, and then that puts you into bankruptcy. Like, maybe 10% of your net, fine. Like,
Yeah.
which in itself could be nosebleed. Like, who knows?
Yeah.
But like, so it's kind of like, and this is actually an important legal philosophical point I'm going to make is our penalties can become tyrannical. So when the government passes a law, they know that they're not going to get 100% compliance. Like, that's just the way you're going to have your outliers who won't comply. But you want to have penalties that sting to get most people complying. So I like to kind of equate it to, you know, wasps, right? So, you know, you want a wasp sting hurts you, it stings you, and it keeps you away from the nest. And if you go back, you get stung again, and it keeps you away. And that's the intention of penalties. They're not supposed to destroy you. They're supposed to sting you so that you'll comply. But when you bring in penalties that will destroy anyone that resists, so now instead of a wasp sting, the person's going to go into anaphylactic shock and die. Well, that's an unreasonable penalty, but that's what this Bill C-63.
Yeah.
And I mean, they changed the law last year in the last budget bill. They snuck in changes where they moved natural products into the therapeutic product category. So before you had a $5,000 a day fine, now you have $5 million a day fines. Like we were talking how with Bill C-69, you know, if you have Pierre Corey on talking about ivermectin for monkeypox and that's illegal, it's a $5 million a day fine. No, who can resist that? That's an anaphylactic shock. It would put you out of business and bankrupt you and destroy your family.
Yeah.
So even if it was in the public interest for you to defy them, you can't. So penalties aren't meant so that people can't stand up to government and disagree, because that's how we evolve as a society, is it's the people who disagree and get punished but not destroyed that force us to have a public discourse, and we can change our policies. But when you move into the zone where penalties are destructive, so you can't resist the government, now you're into tyranny. And all tyranny is, go look in the dictionary, it's absolute discretion.
Yeah.
And it's a negative term because we've learned that absolute discretion is a bad thing. and penalties are not meant to be destructive, but we're moving not just in censorship and in food and drug safety law into the tyranny zone, where then the government has absolute discretion over you, but it's in all areas. And we've also moved in this administrative state model where they can fine you and impose penalties, and you'll never see a court. And your appeal process is to another bureaucrat that works in the same office. And that is a move into absolute discretion.
Yeah.
And we've been in this move for a while now. So there's a wider problem than just what we're discussing here.
They're trying to get out ahead of us for the next one. It really feels that way now. They're laying their hands on the table, and this government here has a year left, and I don't see a whole lot of differentiation with even if the opposing party gets in. I don't see a heck of enough talk about this, and I hope that we, by doing this, can bring this stuff to people's awareness. I know there's a group on Twitter, big supporters of ours, that really do try to keep these bills in front of the masses, and we got to keep people aware of this. And what do you suggest the best thing that we can do? Pressure our MP?
So first of all, so another organization, a nonprofit that I work with, is nhppa.org. And that stands for Natural Health Product Protection Association. Now, we have a subscribe button where you can give us your email address, and then we send you about 18,000 emails a week. No, we don't. It's a rare week we send more than one, and we may not even send one a week. But we try to send one a week to let you know what's going on. But we've had campaign after campaign after campaign. So, I told you that, in the last budget bill, they had, moved natural health products into this therapeutic product category. So now the fine went from 5,000 to 5 million, and a whole bunch of other problems with that. Well, so we wrote a private members bill, which it was introduced by MP Blaine Calkins, Bill 368, and we helped get it into committee. And so one of the things we asked you to do was to write letters. Well, we've had like 500,000 letters on that initiative alone. So on the natural health product front, subscribe to the NHPPA, follow our social media channels so at least we can plug you in. And, on the wider fronts, like censorship and all of that, you've got to be plugging into groups that are getting you to take action. So, because if MPs do listen eventually, like we've moved in. I was going to say we're moving, but it's just getting worse. We've already moved into the state where our laws passed by Parliament are completely adversarial to the citizen. They're completely adversarial to free speech. We've moved into the administrative state. But history tells us that the pendulum swings back and forth, towards more government and less government. But it swings back because of citizens demanding that it swing back. So, people have felt trapped before. People have felt hopeless before, but you're never trapped and you're never hopeless. You have no idea how powerful you are. Like you don't. Most MPs or MLAs, like for those of you out east, you call them MPPs, but most elected representatives, it's rare if they get 10 letters on a single topic. Now, let's say there were 100 viewers of your show in Ontario, and I don't know how many MLAs are in Ontario, but let's pick an easy number and say there's 200. I mean, I expect there's more than that in Ontario. But let's say you had 100 of your viewers say, we're going to, just once a month, on an issue important to us, we're going to all commit to write a physical letter to each of our MLAs. Now, you're going to write one letter, and the address is going to be the same to the legislative building. And once you've written your letter, you're going to spend about 45 minutes changing the name and printing them off, and you'll put them in the same envelope. So you're taking 2.5 hours once a month on a Sunday afternoon to write a letter, and 100 people commit to do that.
I wonder
Well,
if people would watch a stream where I write my letter.
and do this for a year.
Yeah.
Well, each MPP in Ontario will receive 1,200 letters on that topic in the year, and they will never have received 1,200 letters on any topic in their career. And that's just 100 of your viewers. Like, meet with your MPs, meet with your MLAs, phone them, demand telephone interviews, because they're not used to that. And most people watching this will never have written a letter, will never have gone to meet with their MP, and will, never have phoned their MPs because they're afraid. But you have to stop being afraid, and you have to let them know that these are voting issues. So figure out where your lines in the sand are, like certainly on the censorship stuff, my gosh.
Yeah.
And this Food and Drug Act stuff, like, I mean, they are moving us into a world where we're only going to be able to access chemical pharmaceutical drugs.
Yes.
And you don't want to be there, promise me. And so that's why please follow the, nhppa.org, so that when we have campaigns, and we have them regularly, like right now we've got a petition going because, Bill C-368 is in committee. The Health Committee is going to have to hold hearings on it shortly because Parliament started again.
Yeah.
And so we've got a petition at, an official electronic commission with the clerk of petitions. And we're trying to just demonstrate to the MPs in the Health Committee that this is important to Canadians. So sign the petition. And yes, you have to give your name and email address, but that's the way it is with petitions, because the clerk of petitions goes through a certain number of names and verifies you're a real person.
Yeah. Right.
And don't be afraid of being a Canadian signing a petition, whether it's a paper petition or an electronic petition. Don't put in a fake name. Don't put in a fake email address. The whole petition could get kicked out. So going forward, either don't sign it, like anyone's petition, don't sign it if you're not willing to put your true name and email address, or address if it's a paper petition, and phone number, because that's the reason it's there is they verify a certain number of the signatures to confirm you're a real person, so that people can't just fake petitions and say, see, I got 100,000 signatures.
Right. Okay. So that's great. So everybody, the QR code's up there to go to NHPPA and get involved with these measures to stop censorship, to promote natural health and drugs and the like. Very, very good work you're doing over there. And I mean, we got to wrap it up, I'm afraid, for this time. Maybe we can get you back on right before the events. We'll see how you're doing. Yeah, I know you're a busy man.
Yeah, no, but I mean, I really appreciate what you do, because you're a truth teller, and I would be pleased to come on your show, and thank you for having me on your show. So
it's a pleasure, and it's an honor. So everybody's got to start thinking about October 17th and 19th. We're going to go again. National Citizens Inquiry. It's life-altering to watch. All the streams will be available on Rumble. Do they go out on YouTube anymore? Do they let you guys run it
heck,
at all?
I don't know. You have to ask the AV people, and I know you will, and you know them. So so just give them. I mean, obviously they try to stream them, to every platform that they can. Yeah.
But YouTube's pretty rough.
I think we do stream on YouTube, because in Regina, we had a witness who we played a short video, basically days before her husband died, and he was singing to a song, and we got a strike from YouTube, and so we stopped streaming on YouTube because we didn't want to get strike 2 during those hearings, because we just thought that would hurt us overall. So I believe we do stream on YouTube. And now, so I just see somebody says they don't get notifications. So can I just address that?
Yeah.
The NCI split. That's the nicest way I can put it. And so, one group has the old social media channels, and they don't support new hearings, and they're not holding new hearings. And so if you have to go to nationalcitizensinquiry.ca and subscribe to those channels. And that's the website that's always been there. They are doing a mirror website. So I have to say .ca for Canada. But every organization gets mimicked, like, once they're successful, and that's just the way it is. But no, so for the Regina hearings, if people were following the old social media channels, they didn't even know we were holding hearings, and yet they thought they were following the NCI. Well,
Yeah.
So again, I'm trying to be polite, but if you want to get notice about the hearings, you have to go to nationalcitizensinquiry.ca, and there's a list of social media channels. Those are the ones where you're going to get notified about hearings and the like, and also that tickets are available and stuff like that. So you'll have to subscribe to those, and that's why there's that confusion. And I wish there was something I could do about that, but I can't. So I just let you know that's why you're not getting the notice.
I think soon enough, I mean, there's only this true NCI here is active. So it'll cease to be a problem eventually.
Yeah, and we don't even need to go there, but except that there's confusion. Like, we've put out calls, like, so if you are subscribing to nci.ca, and again, you can subscribe there to get the newsletter, and they don't send even one out weekly. Like, probably they will leading up to the hearings, but bearing in mind they're a volunteer organization, and so things don't happen weekly. So go to nationalcitizensinquiry.ca, subscribe to the newsletter, and you will definitely be told about the hearings and any other things. Like, so when we do a call for witnesses and things like that, it does come out on our social media channels, but also through the newsletter. And but it's interesting is we put out calls for funding, and then people will, if you had, back when we were running the 2023 hearings, you could do direct deposit. Well, now that goes to somebody, we don't know where it goes to, but it doesn't go to us. So we have to tell you, if you're going to donate and do a direct deposit, you have to, and you've done it before, you have to delete that. You know how you set up a profile on your Interact?
Yeah.
You have to delete that payee and recreate one with the instructions on the .ca website. So, because we've had people mad saying, well, I donated, but it didn't go to you. Well, sorry, what do you do when people are pretending to be you?
Yes. Yeah.
And they don't send the money back even, so...
Yeah, so I think it'll cease to be a problem eventually, though. I mean,
I'm not here to.
You're keeping up the good work.
That's not why we're talking it, but it's I saw on your feed that somebody's saying I'm not getting the notices. So
that's right. Yep, understood. So I mean, it's all going to work out, and everything is going to be great. I can't wait for this to start. I'd like to bring you back. Where did I go? There now. Now there's some inclusivity. I'm back in the picture.
There we are.
Yeah. So yeah, let's a little bit closer, not too close, because I'm sure I've seen what you guys go through when you're setting these shows up. So maybe like a weekish beforehand, we can get you back on and get a little bit more specifics. You'll have a little bit more knowledge. Maybe when we get close enough that we can announce the venue, or is that going to be like a 2 days before thing?
If we're no, I think it'll be about a week before.
Yeah. Okay.
But I'm not involved in that type of decision. So if we plan for about a week before, by then I'll be, hopefully done most of my witness prep, but sometimes I'm, and have a much better idea of who's coming and who's not, and who I can speak about and who I can't, so to speak. So
okay. So let's target that. We'll be in discussions, and I mean, even if we just come up with the time that we haven't released the venue name yet, we can just record a show and I can broadcast it as soon as we're allowed. We have lots of options, but we should do another warm up, let our hot up before we get to the event, which I can't wait for. So Sean, I want to thank you for coming on, and we're going to wrap it up here. Today's we're going into town. We're going into town for goods. Today we're driving into Whitehorse, get our supplies. And we're leaving in a minute, so we've got to take off. I want to thank you very much, Sean, for joining us. Any parting thoughts for the audience?
No, just I appreciate that your audience are, truth seekers, and, please, whatever issues are important to you, understand how powerful you are, just if you get involved. And please, pump the your social media contacts, what the NCI is doing, because that's how we get people watching, and that's what wakes people up and gets them thinking differently, is seeing information they're not getting in the mainstream media.
Yeah, agreed. And we'll be pumping this event up over the coming month, and then then soon enough I'll be down there. with my little gimbal camera, filming everything again.
I look forward to seeing you again.
Great. All right. Thank you, Sean. Have a great day. All right, everyone. So we know what we got to do. We got to share out the NCI. We've got to make this into an event the way that it was before. And we got no excuses. We know what's coming. And it's going to be such an interesting topic, talking about the safety of our children. Appreciate everyone showing up in chat, seeing a lot of the regulars come in. It's great to see you guys. And we'll talk to you guys real soon.
Do you promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do. So help me God.
So help me God, I promise. I do.
Yes, I do.
Je l'affirme.
I do.
I do.
I do.
I do. I do.
Yes, I do.
Absolutely.
I do.
I do.
I do.